In this video, we'll be going over exercise 4.11, longest name. So essentially for this problem, we have to create a method that takes in several names and prints out the longest one with just the first letter being capitalized and the other letters being in lowercase. And we also have to print out to say if there are multiple names that have the longest length. So we have to say if there is a tie. So let's start off by creating the method longest name. So as you can see, the problem asks for a static method named longest name, which we created here, and it's void because we're not actually returning anything. We're just printing it out. And also we have scanner console and integer n as the parameters that we'll be accepting for this method. So let's start off by creating a string array called names, which will store all the names that we will be taking in. And we'll also create a string variable called longest, which will store the longest name, and we'll also store the index with an integer variable. So now we're going to prompt for a name. So we'll do that using a for loop. As you can see, in the output box, it asks for a name, number, and then a question mark. So we'll print out the same thing. But in this case, they start from 1, but our I starts from 0, so we will need to do I plus 1. Now, we're going to store the name that we get into a string variable s, and we're going to store that in our array. Okay, so now that our array is filled, we're going to cycle through it and see which name has the longest length. So make longest equal to the first name in our array, and we're going to start from index 1 and compare the length of the two names. By two names, I mean the name currently stored in longest. And we're going to compare the length of that with the name that we're currently checking. So in the case that the name that we're currently checking has a longer length, then we're going to want to store that name in longest, at index. So now that we have the longest name, we can now format it correctly. So the problem asks for the first letter to be in uppercase and everything else to be in lowercase. So we'll create two variables for that, upper and lower. For upper, we'll just be taking the first letter of longest, so we can use substring to get that, 0, 1, dot to uppercase if it isn't already. Same idea for lower. We're going to use substring again, other part of the string, and then this time to lowercase. So now we can print it all out. Upper plus lower to combine those two pieces to get the full name. An apostrophe S, name is longest. But of course, we also have to check for a tie. So we'll cycle through the list again, or the array again. We'll use the if statement again to check if the name that we're currently checking has the same length as the name currently in longest. Also, we want to make sure that we're not checking the same name again. So we want to make sure that the index is different so that we know for sure it's a completely different word that we're checking here. So in the case that this is true, we want to print out a statement that says that there was a tie. And then we want to break from here because there's no need to print out the statement multiple times. So now we'll run it to see if it works. And it passes all the test cases.